How's it going, everyone? I'm so excited to make this video. Ever since I started making videos about languages and their frequency, it's been such a journey, and I want to share this video about the languages that currently, in the present moment, with their native names, not their English names, but their native names, the languages that test at the Enlightenment frequency. So, I am learning actually two of these languages, and I'm gonna start from the lowest frequency to the highest. They're all in the Enlightenment frequency, so I'm gonna start with the lowest to highest. So let's start. So the first language on this list is actually Hebrew, Ivrit, right, in the native name. I started learning Hebrew again yesterday, and let's talk about it. What is it about Hebrew that makes it these characteristics, right? This presence, right? You get this presence, right? You get this, you get ineffability. You just, when you listen to Hebrew music, or at least when I do, I listen to Idan Rachel, who I really, really love a lot. I listen to so many of his songs, and I just get these visions, right? I see the Hebrew Nikud, on my third eye. So for example, I see this one, and then I get an Aleph, on my third eye, and then I start doing all these hand motions, and so yeah, the Aleph is one of the Hebrew letters, and then I sometimes even try to make these letters with my, Gimel, for example, with my hand, right? So then I start to do all these things, right? And I start to really just become aware, that Hebrew is for me, it was a language that I realized that this song that I was listening to that goes, Kakamiyom Leyom, and then he goes, Atiti Anita, and that song really, was you can really feel it, you're really creating this moment, and when you start it off, from that one center point, it keeps growing and growing, and then eventually, you'll start to see all of the, illusions that we have, such as the past or the future and all these things, but they're still there, and they will come into your field, but it all came from that one place that it was, expanding from, you see, and that's the kind of stuff that I'm getting. And it was the weirdest thing because, in my dreams last night, I was dreaming about Hebrew in my meditations, I was getting these things coming to me, these kind of poke, in your brain, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, so basically salvation of humanity too, you sort of think a language like Hebrew is it keeps you in that presence, with other people, and the reason why with the English name Hebrew tests that joy is because when you don't really know what it is that you're sort of dealing with here, you're gonna feel oh yeah, they seem happy, right? It's just not really what it is, right? It's much more than that. And then I realized presence was what it was, that these Israelis that I met in Guatemala had this presence to them, and the way that they talked to each other was just present, you know what I mean? And I definitely think that it's a healing language that in just like Sanskrit too, they have om, the sound om in the language. It's just the craziest thing, and there's code and there's mathematics and all these things, agglutination, inflection, I mean, it's something. And I mean, so I get that, that isness, right? That I don't know why it is or how it is that I feel these things from this language, but it just is the way it is, it's just and then I tune into that presence, these things and these synchronicities, and how I match up all these different aspects of my life together, with this Hebrew language, so crazy stuff. So yeah, just the isness of it, that enlightenment, that I'm gonna be constantly, learning new things and whatever, and that really I'm just here, that's the one being truth, that this language Hebrew is trying to give to me is the be in here, be here, and so I really like that about Hebrew, and I think any language that tests this high, will save. There's something about it, you know, it'll save you, you know. And I started realizing the more I tune into things that vibrate at this frequency, the more present that I'm going to be, the more that I'm here, right, in this moment, right, creating from this moment, not creating from a moment that isn't here, right. So it's like you can't create something 3 years later if you're not there yet, you know. And so you really would create it now, you know. If you say 3 years later I, you know, want to be a polyglot, then you say now I am going to learn languages, you see. And that's the power of now, is that, you know, that 3-year thing will come to you, but it's because you created it in the now. And so I find that this Hebrew language is really giving me those things. So yeah, well, let's move on from that. You know, I've talked about Hebrew, and now we're moving on to language number 2. So Hebrew was at 700, right, which is the first number in Enlightenment. You know, like where the frequency of Enlightenment starts at 700 on this Hawkins scale. So we move up to Sanskrit, number 2 Sanskrit, right, 712, higher frequency than Hebrew. I was debating on, you know, whether to start Hebrew or Sanskrit first. I couldn't decide. You know, and I chose, you know, Hebrew because I already, well, I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to say that for the last of the video, but essentially I chose Hebrew first because I felt like the community of Hebrew speakers was more large, or just like I could go to Israel and connect with this, you know, super high vibe language and whatever. And I also went to Guatemala and I met lots of Israelis, and I noticed that there was a huge Hebrew community, a huge, and I know Sanskrit is growing too, so that's why it's gonna be next, because I think that India is going to revive Sanskrit. It's kind of like how Hebrew was a like dead language, you know, and then, you know, it got revived, right, you know, and it's because, you know, it's that powerful, you know. And so something about Sanskrit similar to that, right? Like the Hindus, you know, just like the Jews, right, with the Torah and Hebrew, right, they were able to know that this Sanskrit language was very special enough. It's coming from their source, you know, religion, Hinduism, just like the Torah and Judaism, etc. But we also know that Sanskrit, you know, kind of died out a little bit. I mean, especially with the Islamic invasions. But so essentially now we have towns in India switching back to Sanskrit, and we have a huge community of Sanskrit speakers growing. And so yeah, I'm definitely going to be learning Sanskrit, but I think that I know that Hebrew and Sanskrit both are hard languages, and it's important for me to start with just one first. So I've decided, you know what, I want to do Hebrew because my heart, you know, and I was tuning into that presence, you know, and it was telling me to do Hebrew first. So that's why I ended up picking, you know, Hebrew over Sanskrit. And then the other reasons, right, like the ability to be able to go to an actual country and know for a fact that I'm going to be able to have new connections in that language is something that I consider valuable. With Sanskrit, you know, I could go to the Sanskrit villages, but the thing with Sanskrit, so let's talk about it, because I'm going on a rant with the reasons here. So let's just go into my interpretation of Sanskrit and what these Enlightenment frequency characteristics, how they can apply to Sanskrit. Sanskrit would be just is, in the sense that the mathematics, you know, like how Hebrew has, or like these feelings, right, like that we get, like the ineffable and that presence, it's the same thing with Sanskrit. And we also have, you know, chanting, mantras and stuff, which is something very, very spiritual and healing about Sanskrit and about Hinduism, right? When you think about Hinduism and Sanskrit, you can sort of see that they really match together, kind of as in, like, you know, how Judaism and kind of like Judeo-Christian, you know, things sort of, you know, mold into that Hebrew language kind of. It's like that with Sanskrit and Hinduism. You can sort of, like, you can feel it, you know, that they are one. The salvation of humanity with Sanskrit too comes in with how Sanskrit, you know, is, you know, yeah, the mantras heal people, you know, and I find that, yeah, Hebrew does that too. Like when I listen to Hebrew musics, especially like very spiritual and like uplifting music in Hebrew, it's the same thing. It's like an energy cleanse, you know. And It's truly really amazing, actually. So yeah, and so those are the kind of characteristics. It's like I think that I'm not able to really go too in depth with it because I haven't really gotten into Sanskrit as much as the other two languages on this list, and I think that I don't really have as much to say on it. However, I think that I've said a good bit. I think that Sanskrit is quite a high frequency language, and it's currently in this present moment, as the test as the muscle tests have gone, it's been the highest or the second highest frequency language in existence as we know, or as I know so far. I mean, I'm sure that there's got to be something else that I haven't tested yet that might be higher, but we'll see, right? So this is all coming out of, we're testing in the present moment. There's a plethora of things to test. So anyways, well, let's move on to the final language of this list, right? So the final language of this list is Altai, right? Altai til, right? Which I actually speak, and like better than Hebrew, which is a language that I'm learning, but I don't really know how to speak really very much yet, because my second day. Altai is a Turkic language. What I think about Altai is that the frequency is 730. So what that means is that it goes up. Like, you see a big increase, right? So my theory of why Altai is this high is because Altai, unlike Hebrew and Sanskrit, loses gender. It sort of gets beyond these concepts of masculine and feminine energy, but it instead does something different. It has vowel harmony, right? Which is a concept of harmonizing sounds together. But essentially, there is a truth to gender, obviously, which is why Sanskrit and Hebrew and these types of Spanish, these types of languages exist. There's a reason, right? Because we can observe in creation, in this in this universe, and in this cosmos, right? We can feel, right? We can feel these types of things, right? And so, essentially. And I actually, like, when I was saying all that, like, I kind of was, like, getting, like, a little out there, and I forgot what I was even saying, but it's okay. The point is that gender is an aspect of it all, just as the idea that things just are, but that they are just energy, or that everything is harmony or something, and that things harmonize just based off how sounds harmonize together, or how things are tuned, right? They're tuned to a certain sound or a certain frequency to be able to harmonize together, right? And that is what I get with Altai, is that it's not trying to say like these things are masculine or these things are feminine, right? Because like, how would you really know that? You know what I mean? And so that's what Altai language tries to describe. And my conversations with Altai people and whatever have been quite unbelievable. In fact, on my birthday, I talked Altai to one of my friends, and I started talking about Tingrism and about Tengri and the sky and whatever, and I pretty much felt like I became an avatar. Like I you know what I mean? Like I felt like I was the blue man, Tengri in the sky, and I was the whole thing. You know what I mean? So it Altai, but the thing is that Hebrew and Sanskrit can do that to you too. It's just that Altai could, since it's a little bit higher frequency, you're just one step closer to avatar state. So my theory is that the origin of all of this, or I guess, is that the original language probably didn't even have meaning at all, or maybe just was feeling or being and things like that. And so maybe the reason why Altai is 730 is because unlike the Sanskrit and the Hebrew, where you can still like get understanding, you know what I mean? It's like you just go way beyond understanding. I mean, the Altai, or is this like, it's like literally like, it's inevitable, like in the sense that you'll be in it, right? And you'll feel it out, right? I mean, things can be defined, but yet at the same time, there's so much ambiguity. Like, I'm sure Hebrew and Sanskrit also have ambiguity, and I'm sure that there are times when we don't have that clear understanding, but we're just feeling and being, right? I'm sure that that's the same thing. I'm just saying that from my personal experience as someone who's spoken Altai and studied Altai, I'm attesting that that a lot of times I find that I'm just feeling it, you know what I mean? And I'm not, and then I embody that feeling, and then it's just such a transcendent feeling, and so it's just like it's inevitable, you know, and I don't know why it is that Altai, you know, that it gives me these effects. It just is, and I sort of feel as though this language also can save humanity as well because of how it is so high frequency, right? And yeah, so that being said though, that is actually all I wanted to say, and this video is going on long, but this is important stuff and to get that message out there. And I'm so excited to see what you guys think about this. And yeah, these are the languages currently I'm thinking are the most valuable for humans to reach. If we want to, you know, like have that green earth Eden garden again, we should be basing that off Sanskrit and Hebrew and a language maybe like Altai, you know, or something, right? Like one of the really old, you know, Turkic or Finnic languages, right? Like that might also be really, really good for people to speak, yeah. And the reason why I say maybe with Altai is because it's just such a small language, you know. That's, you know, endemic to such a small area, right? In the Altai Republic, it seems that, you know, Sanskrit and Hebrew, they have more of an ability to expand in the world, whereas this Altai, I mean, maybe if the Turks, you know, agreed to speak Altai instead of Turkish, Uzbek, or Kyrgyz or whatever, maybe then that would be the way that we would get Altai massively spoken across the world. But it's probably not going to happen like that because, you know, these other Turkic languages are very beautiful too, and it wouldn't make sense for all the Turks to speak one language. However, as we're seeing in India, these towns switching to Sanskrit, it's showing that, you know, the Indians that speak different, you know, like Hindi or Punjabi, etc., they are actually themselves wanting to do Sanskrit again. They see that as their mother tongue, right, and their mother language. And so I just don't really see that happening with Turkic peoples in this present moment. But I see it happening with India because of how they're receiving that. They're receiving that change, you know. Whereas I think that would be a very hypothetical situation with the Turkic languages, yes. Although it's an interesting hypothesis for sure. And you know, then with the Hebrew, of course, you know, that's also expanding a huge community of learners as well. Maybe 15 million speakers, and so yeah, and then also you can find Israelis everywhere. The community is so big, and so yeah, the Sanskrit and Hebrew are definitely expansive. They can expand. They have that affinity to expand to the world, which is really why I think that that could be a calling for a lot of people if you consider that your opportunities are going to be greater. However, if your heart is really telling you to Altai, then I mean, you can chat with me anytime because I think it's a great language too, but I do think that Hebrew and Sanskrit might be more important actually because of that expansiveness and that community that grows, you know, ever so expansively. So anyways, I hope to inspire, and yeah, I'll see you guys in another video. Bye bye.